Please don't die. 7-year-old Danny Hartwell pressed his tiny hands against the stranger's chest, feeling blood pulse through his fingers. The man's face was destroyed, chains cut into his wrists. A Hell's Angels patch gleamed under layers of dried crimson. "They're taking children," the dying man gasped. "Through the tunnels. You have to tell someone." Danny didn't run. He pulled out his dead father's phone and dialed 911. That single call would expose a trafficking network, destroy a federal judge, and bring 2,000 Hell's Angels roaring into a town that had never seen 10 motorcycles at once. One satisfactory of Coco. One dying outlaw. One choice that changed everything. Where are you watching from? Drop a comment. Subscribe now. This story will haunt you forever. Danny Hartwell heard the scream at 7:19 a.m. Not a movie scream. Not a kid playing scream. This was the sound of a grown man trying not to die. He dropped his bag of chestnuts and ran toward it. Grandma Eleanor had told him 1,000 times, stay away from the old Copper Ridge mine. Dangerous shafts, rusty equipment, a place where bad things happened to curious children. Danny ran straight toward it anyway. The fog made everything gray. Trees looked like ghosts. His sneakers slipped on wet leaves, but he kept going, following that terrible sound until he burst through a wall of dead brambles and stopped cold. The man was huge. Even chained to the rusted mining cart slumped and broken, he looked like something out of Danny's nightmare. Leather vest torn open, face swollen purple and black. Blood everywhere on the chains on the ground, dripping slow and steady from wounds Danny couldn't count. The skull patch on his chest grinned up at the gray sky. Hell's Angels. Danny had seen that patch on TV once. His grandmother had changed the channel so fast she'd knocked over her coffee. The man's one working eye found Danny. His voice came out like gravel scraping bone. "Kid, get out, now." Danny took a step closer. "I said run." The man tried to lunge forward, but the chains snapped tight. He cried out, fresh blood welling from his wrist. "They'll kill you too. Go." "Who?" Danny's voice didn't shake. It surprised both of them. "Who's gonna kill me?" The man stared at him. His breathing was wrong, too fast, too shallow. Danny had heard breathing like that before. The night his father came home from the hospital the last time. The night before the funeral. "You're dying," Danny said, not a question. "Yeah." The man's head dropped. "Yeah, kid, I am." Danny pulled the thermos from his bag. His grandmother's hot cocoa still warm. He unscrewed the cap and held it up to the man's split lips. "Drink." "What are you doing?" "Helping." Danny tilted the thermos carefully. "My daddy said that's what people do." The man drank. Cocoa ran down his chin, mixing with blood, but he swallowed what he could. When Danny pulled back, there were tears cutting through the grime on the man's face. "What's your name, Mr. Marcus?" A wet cough. "Viper." "I'm Danny. I'm 7. "Danny." Viper's eye locked onto him with sudden intensity. "Listen to me. You gotta call the cops. Not for me, for the kids." "What kids?" "They're taking children." Each word cost him. "Through the mine tunnels. I found out. That's why they—" He looked down at his chains. "That's why I'm here." Danny's hand went to his pocket, his father's old flip phone, cracked screen, dying battery. His grandmother made him carry it everywhere. "How many kids?" "I don't know. 12. Maybe more. They're moving them soon. Tomorrow, maybe tonight." Viper's voice cracked. "You gotta tell someone. Promise me, Danny. Promise me you'll tell them about the tunnels." Danny was already dialing. 911, what's your emergency?" "There's a man chained up at the old Copper Ridge mine. He's hurt bad, real bad, and he says people are taking kids through the tunnels." Silence on the line, then, "Sweetheart, what's your name?" "Danny Hartwell. I live on Route 7. Please hurry. He's gonna die if you don't hurry." "Stay on the line, Danny. Help is coming. Can you—" Danny hung up. He only had 12% battery. He couldn't waste it. "They're coming," he told Viper. "The ambulance is coming." Viper's eye had closed. His chest barely moved. "Hey." Danny grabbed his hand, huge, cold, slick with blood. "Hey, you gotta stay awake. You hear me? My daddy died and I didn't get to say goodbye. You're not doing that to me too." Viper's eye opened. "Your daddy. He was a soldier. He got killed saving his friends." Danny's grip tightened. "He was brave. You gotta be brave too. Stay awake." "Kid." Viper's voice was fading. I was a soldier too. Long time ago. Then act like it. Soldiers don't quit. Something flickered in Viper's face. Almost a smile. Bossy little thing, aren't you? My grandma says I got my daddy's stubbornness. Good. Viper squeezed back, weak but real. You're gonna need it. The sirens started somewhere far away. Danny counted the seconds between each wail the way he used to count thunder after lightning. They're close, he said. 5 minutes, maybe less. Danny, Viper's voice dropped low. Inside my vest. Left pocket. There's a paper. Danny reached in carefully, his small fingers finding a folded square wet with blood. He pulled it out. That's the map, the tunnels, where they're keeping the kids. Viper's eye burned into him. Don't give it to the local cops. You understand, don't trust them. Why? Because one of them put me here. Danny's blood went cold. A cop did this. Sheriff Benson, he's in on it, all of it. Viper coughed and blood came up. FBI, find the FBI, tell them everything. How do I find? They'll find you. Viper's grip was weakening. After this, they'll find you. Just stay alive until they do. The sirens were loud now. Danny could hear tires on gravel, voices shouting, boots crashing through brush. One more thing. Viper pulled Danny closer. The people who did this, they know about you now. What? I heard them talking. Before they left, they saw you in the woods, collecting chestnuts. Viper's voice was barely a whisper. They know your face, Danny. They know where you live. The underbrush exploded with paramedics and deputies. Someone grabbed Danny's shoulder, yanking him back. Get away from him now. He needs help. Danny fought against the grip. He's dying. He's a Hell's Angel kid. Step back. He's a person. Danny's voice cracked through the chaos. He tried to save kids, and they chained him up for it. He's a hero. Everyone stopped. The deputy holding Danny, young guy, couldn't be more than 25, stared down at him like he'd grown a second head. What did you say? There are kids in the tunnels. Danny held up the bloody map. This shows where, and Sheriff Benson is the one who put him here. The young deputy's face went white. Behind them, the paramedics worked fast, cutting chains, shouting vitals, loading Viper onto a stretcher. As they lifted him, his hand shot out and grabbed Danny's wrist. Remember, he rasped, don't trust Benson. Find the FBI and stay alive. I will. I'm gonna find you, Danny Hartwell. Viper's eye held something fierce, something unbreakable. When this is over, I owe you a life. I always pay my debts. They loaded him into the ambulance. The doors slammed. Sirens screamed to life. Danny stood in the clearing, blood on his hands, his father's phone dead in his pocket, holding a map that 12 children's lives depended on. The young deputy crouched beside him. His nameplate said Mitchell. Kid, that thing you said about Sheriff Benson, it's true. How do you know? The man told me, and he had no reason to lie. Danny looked up at Deputy Mitchell. You believe me? Mitchell's jaw tightened. He glanced around at the other officers, then back at Danny. My squad car, now. I'm taking you home, and we're going to have a long talk with your grandmother. What about the FBI? I know someone. Mitchell stood his hand on Danny's shoulder. Let's move. Before anyone asks questions I don't want to answer. Eleanor Hartwell was hanging laundry when the squad car pulled up. She saw Danny in the back seat. She saw the blood on his jacket. The phone slipped from her apron pocket and cracked on the porch steps. Danny, she was running before she knew it, bare feet on cold grass. Danny. He climbed out of the car and crashed into her arms. He didn't cry. He hadn't cried since his father's funeral. But he held on like he'd never let go. I'm okay, Grandma. I'm okay. There's blood. Whose blood is this? What happened? She pulled back, checking him for wounds. Daniel James Hartwell, you tell me right now. It's not mine. There was a man in the woods. He was hurt. I helped him. Deputy Mitchell approached slowly, hands visible. Mrs. Hartwell, I'm Deputy Jake Mitchell. We need to talk. Inside. Now. Something in his voice made Eleanor's spine straighten. She'd heard that tone before. From military officers. From doctors. From everyone who'd delivered bad news to her door. What's going on? Inside, ma'am, please. The kitchen table had seen a lot of hard conversations. The day Eleanor's husband died of cancer. The day her son deployed. The day 2 officers came to tell her he wasn't coming home. The day her daughter-in-law left a note and vanished. This conversation might be the hardest yet. Your grandson stumbled onto something big, Mitchell said, his coffee untouched. The man he found, Marcus Donovan, goes by Viper. He's Hell's Angels, chapter out of Nashville. But he's also former Army Ranger with commendations I've never even heard of. A biker and a soldier. Yes, ma'am. And according to what he told Danny, he discovered a trafficking operation running through the old Copper Ridge tunnels, children being moved across state lines. When he tried to stop it, they beat him half to death and left him chained to a mining cart. Eleanor's hand found Danny's under the table, and my grandson walked right into the middle of it. He did more than that. Mitchell pulled out the bloody map Danny had given him. He recovered this. Tunnel locations, entry points, possible holding areas. This is more intelligence than federal agencies have gathered in 3 years. Federal agencies. Ma'am, I need to be straight with you. Mitchell leaned forward. Sheriff Benson is involved. I don't know how deep, but Donovan named him specifically, which means I can't report this through normal channels. Then what do you suggest? I have a contact, FBI agent named Rachel Moreno. She's been hunting this network since before I joined the force. I trust her with my life. He paused. I need to trust her with your grandson's life, too. Eleanor's grip on Danny's hand tightened. Explain. The people who did this, they saw Danny. They know his face. They know he can identify the location, knows about the tunnels, knows about Benson. Mitchell's voice was steady, but his eyes weren't. They're going to come for him. No. Eleanor stood so fast her chair scraped the floor. Absolutely not. I've already buried my son. I am not. Grandma, Danny's voice cut through her panic, small, calm, certain. There are kids in those tunnels. Kids like me. If I don't help what happens to them, that's not your responsibility. Daddy said everyone's responsible for everyone. Danny looked up at her with eyes that belonged to someone much older. That's why he went to war. That's why he didn't come home. Because he couldn't leave people behind. Eleanor's heart cracked right down the middle. She saw her son in that face. The same stubborn jaw, the same impossible courage, the same willingness to walk into fire for strangers. It was the quality that had made him a hero. It was the quality that had killed him. Mrs. Hartwell, Mitchell's voice was gentle now. I can't promise you this will be safe, but I can promise you that Agent Moreno will do everything possible to protect your family. And I can promise you that if we don't act fast, those kids in the tunnels won't have any chance at all. Eleanor sank back into her chair. Her hands were shaking. 67 years old, and she'd never felt so helpless. How long until this agent gets here? She's already on her way. She was in Knoxville when I called. 2 hours, maybe less. And until then, I stay here. Anyone comes through that door who isn't supposed to, they go through me first. Danny squeezed his grandmother's hand. It's going to be okay, Grandma. I can feel it. How can you feel that? Because Mr. Viper promised he'd find me, and soldiers keep their promises. Danny's voice was fierce with belief, just like Daddy did. Eleanor wanted to scream. She wanted to pack a bag and run and never stop running. She wanted to turn back time and keep Danny inside that morning, keep him away from chestnuts and forests and dying strangers. But she looked at her grandson, 7 years old, covered in a stranger's blood, calm as stone, and she understood something terrible. Danny had already made his choice. All she could do now was stand beside him. The black SUV pulled up at 4:47 p.m. Agent Rachel Moreno wasn't what Eleanor expected. Late 30s, dark hair pulled back tight, eyes that missed nothing. She moved like someone who'd seen too much and couldn't afford to look away. Mrs. Hartwell, Danny. She didn't smile, didn't offer pleasantries. We don't have much time. Sheriff Benson knows I'm in town, which means the people he works for know too. How? Mitchell asked. Because I saw him at the county line. He had 4 vehicles with him, unmarked. Moreno set a tablet on the kitchen table. They're searching, probably for the same thing we're looking for. The tunnel entrance, Danny said. Moreno looked at him, really looked for the first time. Whatever she saw made her expression shift. You're the kid who saved Viper. Yes, ma'am. He's awake, you know. Woke up an hour ago. First thing he said was, "Your name." She pulled up a photo on the tablet. Hospital bed, tubes and wires. But Viper's eyes were open, and even through the screen, Danny could see the fire in them. Is he going to be okay? Doctors say he shouldn't be alive. Collapsed lung, internal bleeding, 15 broken bones. But he's not just alive, he's demanding to see you. Moreno shook her head. Toughest man I've ever met, and I've met a lot of tough men. Can I see him? Soon. First I need what you know. Moreno sat down across from Danny, her voice softening slightly. The map you recovered, it's good. Really good. But there are gaps. Viper was working from memory, and he was half dead when he drew it. I need you to tell me everything he said. Every word. Danny closed his eyes, remembering. He said the tunnels connect underground, that they've been moving kids for months, maybe years. He said Sheriff Benson gets paid to look the other way, but there are others too. He didn't know all the names. What else? He said they're moving the kids soon. Tomorrow, maybe tonight. He said there could be 12 of them, maybe more. Danny opened his eyes, and he said they know about me. They saw me in the woods before I found him. Moreno's jaw tightened. Did he say anything else about that? How they saw you, what they looked like? No, he was fading pretty bad by then. Danny hesitated. But he said something weird. What? He said, I always pay my debts, like it was important, like it meant something. Moreno leaned back. Something flickered across her face, recognition maybe, or worry. It does mean something. In his world, it means everything. She stood up. Danny, here's what's going to happen. I'm going to station agents around this property. Deputy Mitchell will coordinate with state police we can trust. Your grandmother is going to keep you inside, away from windows, until we locate that tunnel entrance and secure those children. What about Mr. Viper? What about him? He knows where the entrance is. The real entrance. He told me this map wasn't complete. Moreno froze. He said this shows where to look, but not where to find. I remember because it sounded like a riddle. Why didn't you mention this before? You didn't ask. Moreno stared at him for a long moment. Then she did something unexpected. She laughed, not a big laugh, just a short surprise sound that seemed to catch her off guard. You know what, Danny, you might be the best witness I've ever worked with. She pulled out her phone. I'm going to the hospital. Viper needs to finish that map. Mitchell, you stay here. Eyes open. Copy that. Moreno paused at the door. Danny, that man you saved today, he's been working undercover for 18 months. Infiltrated the trafficking network at my request. When they found out they were supposed to kill him and dump the body where we'd never find it. But they didn't. No, they got sloppy. Decided to make him suffer first. Chained him up where they thought no one would look. She met Danny's eyes. If you'd been 5 minutes later, he'd be dead. And those 12 kids would have disappeared forever. But I wasn't late. No. Moreno's voice was strange now. Thick. No, Danny, you weren't. She left. The kitchen felt smaller somehow. Eleanor started making dinner because she didn't know what else to do. Mitchell checked windows and doors for the third time. Danny sat at the table staring at the tablet Moreno had left behind. Viper's face stared back. Grandma, yes, sweetheart. Daddy used to say some people are born for hard things. He said that's why God makes some of us stubborn. Eleanor's hands stopped moving. She turned from the stove, looking at her grandson with new eyes. Why are you telling me this? Because I think I understand now. Danny touched the screen, tracing the outline of Viper's battered face. I think I was supposed to find him. I think I was supposed to be there. Danny, the kids in the tunnels, they're waiting for someone to help them, like Mr. Viper was waiting. Danny looked up at his grandmother. Maybe that's what I'm for. Maybe that's why Daddy had to leave, so I'd be here when it mattered. Eleanor crossed the kitchen and pulled her grandson into her arms. She held him tight, feeling his small heart beat against her chest, knowing with terrible certainty that he was right. Danny Hartwell had been born for this moment, and God help her, she had to let him rise to meet it. The phone rang at 11:47 p.m. Eleanor had finally gotten Danny to sleep, though he'd fought it for hours, wanting to stay alert, wanting to help. Mitchell was on the porch trading shifts with a state trooper Moreno had sent. Eleanor answered on the second ring. Mrs. Hartwell, this is Agent Moreno. What's wrong? We have a problem. Viper gave us the complete location. The tunnel entrance is in the old Henderson mine shaft 3 miles from your property. That's good, isn't it? That means you can... We went in an hour ago. The children aren't there. Eleanor's blood turned to ice. They moved them early, sometime in the last 6 hours. We found evidence, food wrappers, blankets, restraints, but the kids are gone. Oh, God. There's more. Moreno's voice tightened. We found something else, a list, names and addresses of everyone who might know about the operation. And being known, Danny's on it. Your address is circled in red. Eleanor's hand went to her mouth. Mrs. Hartwell, I'm sending additional units now. But I need you to understand something. These people aren't going to stop. They've invested too much, lost too much. And Danny is the only witness who can connect Sheriff Benson to the trafficking ring. What are you saying? I'm saying they're coming for him. Tonight, maybe right now. Eleanor heard it then. The sound of engines. Not one, not two, a dozen. Coming up the mountain road toward her farm. She ran to the window and looked out. Headlights cut through the darkness. A convoy of trucks and SUVs moving fast, moving silent. They're here, Eleanor whispered. Get Danny. Get to the basement. Do not open that door for anyone until you hear my voice. Eleanor dropped the phone and ran for Danny's room. Behind her, the first truck pulled into her driveway. And somewhere in the distance, another sound began to grow. The thunder of motorcycles. Eleanor grabbed Danny from his bed without explanation. His eyes flew open, confused, still half asleep. Grandma, what? Basement now. Don't ask questions. She pulled him down the hallway, her bare feet silent and on the wooden floor. Behind them, the front door exploded inward. Deputy Mitchell's voice rang out. Federal officers, do not... Gunfire cut him off. Danny screamed. Eleanor clamped her hand over his mouth and shoved him toward the basement stairs. Go, hide behind the water heater. Don't come out until I come get you. Grandma, no, Danny. Her voice cracked with something he'd never heard before. Fear, real fear. I love you, now go. She pushed him through the basement door and slammed it shut. Danny tumbled down the stairs, catching himself on the railing. Above him, he heard his grandmother's voice, high and defiant. This is private property. You have no right. A man's voice, cold and flat. Where's the boy? What boy? I live alone. Don't lie to me, Mrs. Hartwell. We saw him at the mine this morning. We know he talked to Donovan. We know he has the map. I don't know what you're talking about. A slap, hard. Eleanor cried out. Danny's hands balled into fists. Every muscle in his body screamed at him to run upstairs to help her to do something. But his grandmother's words echoed in his head. Hide. Don't come out. He pressed himself against the cold concrete wall behind the water heater, making himself as small as possible. His father's dog tags pressed against his chest, metal on skin. Daddy, he thought. What do I do? Upstairs, more voices, more boots. Someone was tearing the house apart, throwing furniture, smashing things. Check every room, every closet. The kid's here somewhere. What about the old woman? She's insurance. For now. Danny heard his grandmother cry out again. Then nothing. He squeezed his eyes shut, tears streaming down his face. This was his fault. He'd saved Viper. He'd found the map. He'd called 911, and now his grandmother was paying for it. The basement door crashed open. Check down there. Footsteps on the stairs. Heavy boots, coming closer. Danny held his breath. The footsteps stopped at the bottom of the stairs. A flashlight beam swept across the basement, cutting through the darkness. Nothing down here. Just old junk. Check behind everything. Kid's small. He could be anywhere. The boots moved across the concrete floor. Danny could see them now through a gap in the machinery. Black tactical boots, military style. 3 feet away, 2 feet. The flashlight beam swung toward the water heater, and then the world outside exploded with thunder. Not real thunder, not storm thunder, the thunder of 100 motorcycles. The boots stopped. The man swore. What the hell? Upstairs, someone screamed. We got company, bikers, dozens of them. How many? I don't know, 50, maybe more. They're surrounding the property. The boots sprinted back up the stairs. Danny stayed frozen listening. Engines roared outside. Men shouted, glass shattered. Then a voice boomed through some kind of speaker deep and commanding. "This is Thunder Jackson, president of the Nashville Hells Angels. You have exactly 30 seconds to release the woman and the boy. We're coming in, and we're not coming to talk." Silence. "Then you're bluffing. There's maybe 60 of you. We have 63, plus the 27 from the Memphis chapter who just pulled up behind you, and the 41 from Knoxville coming up the mountain right now. You want to count again?" More silence. Danny crept toward the stairs, his heart pounding so hard he thought it might burst. "You've got 10 seconds left," Thunder's voice continued. "I'd start making decisions." A new voice, one Danny recognized. Sheriff Benson. "Stand down, Jackson. This is official police business. You have no jurisdiction here. Neither do you, Benson. This ain't your county. And even if it was, we both know what you're really doing here." Thunder's voice dropped lower, dangerous. "You think we don't know about the tunnels? You think Viper didn't tell us everything? Viper's dead. Viper's in the hospital, you lying piece of garbage. And he's singing like a bird to every federal agent who'll listen. You're done, Benson. The only question is whether you walk out of here in cuffs or in a bag." Danny reached the top of the stairs. The basement door hung open, splintered where someone had kicked it in. Through the doorway, he could see his grandmother's kitchen destroyed, chairs overturned, dishes shattered, blood on the floor, Grandma's blood. He stepped through the doorway. His grandmother was on her knees in the living room, her hands zip-tied behind her back. Her lip was split, her eye already swelling. A man in black tactical gear stood behind her, a gun pressed to her head. "Danny, no!" Eleanor screamed when she saw him. "Run! I'm not leaving you." The man with the gun smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. "Well, well, there he is, the little hero." He pressed the gun harder against Eleanor's temple. "Come here, boy, slowly, or Grandma's brains decorate the wall." Danny walked forward. His legs felt like they belonged to someone else. Outside, Thunder's voice crackled again. "Time's up, Benson. What's it gonna be?" Benson appeared in Danny's peripheral vision. The sheriff looked nothing like he did on TV, all friendly smiles and community service. His face was twisted with rage and fear. "We've got the kid," Benson called out, "and the old woman. Anyone comes through that door, they both die." "Then I guess we're at an impasse." Thunder's voice was calm, too calm. "Here's the thing, though, Benson. You might kill them, but you won't make it off this mountain, not one of you. We got the roads blocked. We've got the trails covered. You're surrounded by over 100 men who would die for that kid." "Why?" The man holding Eleanor laughed. "He's nobody, just some brat who stuck his nose where it didn't belong." "He saved our brother's life." Thunder's voice hardened. "That makes him family, and Hell's Angels don't abandon family." Danny stood in the middle of his grandmother's destroyed living room, surrounded by men with guns, listening to a motorcycle club president negotiate for his life. He should have been terrified. Instead, he felt something else, something his father had talked about once in one of their late-night conversations before deployment. Clarity. "Let my grandma go," Danny said. Everyone turned to look at him. "What?" The man with the gun actually looked confused. "Let her go. I'm the one you want. I'm the one who saw everything. She doesn't know anything." "Danny, no," Eleanor started. "Grandma." Danny's voice was steady. "It's okay, let me do this." The man with the gun laughed again. "Kid's got guts. I'll give him that." "Let the woman go," Benson said suddenly. "He's right, she's useless to us. But the kid comes with us." "Wait," the gunman started. "Do it, we don't have time for this. Get the kid in the truck and let's move." The gunman shoved Eleanor forward. She stumbled, falling hard with her hands still tied. Danny lunged toward her. "Grandma!" Someone grabbed him from behind, lifting him off his feet. "Got him. Let's go." "Danny!" Eleanor screamed, struggling to rise. "Danny!" They dragged him toward the back door, away from the front where the bikers were gathered. Danny kicked and fought, but the men holding him were too strong. Through the back window, he saw more black trucks waiting. A clear escape route. They'd planned this. They knew the bikers would come to the front. They'd had an exit strategy the whole time. Danny was thrown into the back of a truck. The door slammed. Darkness. He heard engines start. felt the truck lurch forward. They were taking him, and there was nothing anyone could do. The truck hadn't made it a quarter mile before it stopped. Danny heard shouting outside, confused, angry shouting. Then the back doors flew open and blinding light flooded in. A massive figure blocked the light. Leather vest, gray beard, eyes like chips of ice. "You, Danny." Danny nodded, shielding his eyes. "I'm Bear, Memphis chapter. We had the back roads covered." The big man reached in and lifted Danny out like he weighed nothing. "Your grandma's safe. Agent Moreno's got her. You okay, kid?" Danny looked around. The truck was surrounded by motorcycles. The men who'd grabbed him were face down on the ground, zip-tied with their own restraints. More bikers than Danny could count formed a wall of leather and chrome. "I'm okay," Danny finished. Bear set him down gently. "Viper said you were tough. Guess he wasn't lying." "You know Mr. Viper." "Know him, kid. I served with him. 2 tours in Afghanistan. He saved my life more times than I can count." Bear's weathered face softened. "When we got word what happened to him, what you did for him, every chapter within 500 miles mobilized. You're a Hell's Angel now, whether you know it or not." A black SUV screeched to a stop behind the motorcycles. Agent Moreno jumped out, her face white with fear that melted into relief when she saw Danny. "Thank God." She ran to him, then caught herself maintaining professional distance. "Are you hurt?" "No, ma'am. They didn't get the chance." Moreno looked at Bear. "I owe you." "You don't owe us anything. We protect our own." Bear nodded toward Danny. "And this one's ours now." "Where's my grandma?" Danny asked. "Being treated by paramedics. She's banged up, but she'll be fine." Moreno crouched to Danny's level. "Danny, I know you've been through a lot, but I need to ask you something important." "What?" "The children, the ones from the tunnels. We still don't know where they've been moved. Viper's map showed us where they were, but they're gone now." She paused. "Did you hear anything while they had you? Anything about where they might have taken the kids?" Danny closed his eyes, thinking back. The chaos, the shouting, the men tearing apart his grandmother's house. And then he remembered. One of them, the one with the gun, he was on the phone when they first came in, before everything went crazy. Danny opened his eyes. He said something about the boat and a time. Midnight, I think. Moreno's expression sharpened. A boat. What else? Anything about where? A name. Sounded like Copper something. Copper Harbor. Maybe, I'm not sure. Moreno was already on her phone. Get me everything on Copper Harbor. Any boats scheduled to depart tonight. Any connection to Benson or the trafficking network. She looked at Danny. You might have just saved those kids. I hope so. Bear put a heavy hand on Danny's shoulder. Come on, kid. Let's get you back to your grandma. She's been raising holy hell trying to get to you. They loaded Danny into the SUV. As they pulled away, he looked back at the wall of motorcycles, the men in leather who'd come out of nowhere to save him. Bear, yeah, why? Why would all these people come for me? They don't even know me. Bear was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was rough with something that might have been emotion. Because that's what we do, kid. The world looks at us and sees criminals, outlaws, monsters. But you looked at Viper and saw a man worth saving. You didn't see the patch. You saw the person. He cleared his throat. That kind of thing, it matters. More than you know. The SUV wound down the mountain road. Behind them, the motorcycles fell into formation, a protective convoy of thunder and chrome. Danny leaned his head against the window and watched the trees blur past. Somewhere out there, 12 children were waiting to be saved. He'd find them, no matter what it took. The hospital was chaos. Reporters had gathered outside, somehow already aware that something big was happening. Police cars from 3 different counties filled the parking lot. Federal agents moved through the hallways with purpose and urgency. And in the middle of it all, Eleanor Hartwell sat on a gurney in the emergency room, refusing treatment until she saw her grandson. Danny, she was off the gurney before anyone could stop her, pulling him into an embrace so tight he could barely breathe. Grandma, I'm okay. I thought I'd lost you. She was crying now, tears mixing with the blood from her split lip. When they took you, I thought, I'm okay, I'm right here. They held each other for a long moment. Nurses and agents and bikers swirled around them, but none of it mattered. They were together. They were alive. Agent Moreno approached carefully. Mrs. Hartwell, we need to get you both to a secure location. Sheriff Benson is still at large and I'm not going anywhere. Eleanor's voice was still wrapped in grandmotherly warmth. Not until I see the man my grandson risked his life to save. Moreno hesitated. Mrs. Hartwell, Marcus Donovan is in critical but stable condition. He's not really in any shape for... I don't care what shape he's in. That man is the reason my grandson is alive right now. Those bikers came because of him. I have words for him, and I intend to say them. Danny looked up at his grandmother. Her face was bruised, her lip was swollen, and her eyes were red from crying. But underneath all of that, he saw something else. Respect, Moreno sighed. Room 412, 5 minutes, and I'm coming with you. They took the elevator in silence. Eleanor held Danny's hand the whole way, her grip firm and unwavering. When the doors opened, 2 Hells Angels were standing guard outside Viper's room. They nodded at Danny like he was someone important. Go ahead, little brother, one of them said. He's been asking for you. Little brother. Danny filed that away, not sure what it meant, but knowing it mattered. The room was dim, filled with the soft beeping of machines. Viper lay in the bed, smaller somehow than he'd seemed, chained to that mining cart. Tubes ran from his arms. Bandages covered most of his face. But his eyes were open, and when he saw Danny, they lit up with something that looked almost like joy. There he is. Viper's voice was weak but warm. The bravest kid in Tennessee. Mr. Viper. Danny approached the bed slowly. You look better. I look like death warmed over, and we both know it. Viper's gaze moved to Eleanor. You must be Grandma. Eleanor stepped forward. Her expression was unreadable. You're the reason my grandson almost died tonight. Viper didn't flinch. Yes, ma'am, I am. You're the reason men with guns came to my home, destroyed everything I own, and nearly killed me in my own kitchen. Yes, ma'am. You're also the reason 100 men on motorcycles drove through the night to save him. Eleanor's voice cracked. And according to my grandson, you're the reason 12 children might still be alive. Viper said nothing. Eleanor moved closer to the bed. Danny watched, unsure what was about to happen. And then his grandmother did something unexpected. She took Viper's hand. Thank you, she whispered, for trying to save those children, for giving my grandson something to believe in, for surviving. Viper's eyes glistened. Ma'am, your grandson saved me, not the other way around. Then I guess you're even. Eleanor squeezed his hand. But if you ever put him in danger again, I'll finish what those men started. Are we clear? A ghost of a smile crossed Viper's battered face. Yes, ma'am. Crystal clear. Danny moved to the other side of the bed. Mr. Viper, I told Agent Moreno what I heard about the boat in Copper Harbor. Viper's expression sharpened instantly. What did you hear? The men who came for me. One of them was on the phone. He said something about midnight in a boat. Copper Harbor. Viper tried to sit up, wincing in pain. That's where they're taking them. It's the extraction point. There's a cargo ship that comes through every month. Off the books. They load the kids and... He broke off, his jaw tight. We have to stop them. We will, Moreno said from the doorway. I've got teams mobilizing right now. Coast Guard is being notified. We'll intercept the boat before it reaches open water. It's not enough. Viper shook his head. Benson knows all the federal frequencies. He'll tip them off. They'll change plans, find another route. The only way to catch them is to be there before they expect anyone. And how do you suggest we do that? Viper looked past Moreno to the window where the first light of dawn was beginning to break. How many bikes are outside right now? Moreno's eyes narrowed. You can't be serious. How many? I don't know, 60, 70, more coming every hour. Viper nodded slowly. Copper Harbor is 3 hours from here by road. 2.5 if you know the shortcuts. He met Moreno's gaze. Give me a phone, let me make some calls. You can barely move. I don't need to move. I need to talk. Viper's voice hardened. Those kids are running out of time. You want to save them. Let me help. Moreno hesitated. Danny saw the conflict in her face. Protocol versus desperation, rules versus reality. Please, Danny said quietly. He knows these people. He knows how they think. If anyone can help find those kids, it's him. Moreno looked at Danny for a long moment. Then she pulled out her phone and handed it to Viper. You've got 1 hour. Make it count. Viper took the phone with his good hand, the one that wasn't wrapped in bandages. He started dialing. Thunder, it's Viper. Yeah, I'm alive. Listen, we've got a situation. Danny watched as the man he'd saved became someone else entirely. Not a victim, not a patient, a warrior. Whatever was coming next, Danny knew one thing for certain. He was going to be part of it. The next 2 hours were a blur. More motorcycles arrived. Dozens, then hundreds. The hospital parking lot transformed into a sea of chrome and leather men from chapters across 3 states, gathering like an army, preparing for war. Danny watched from the hospital window, his grandmother beside him. There's so many of them, he whispered. They came for you, Eleanor said, and for those children. But why? They don't know those kids. They don't know me. Eleanor was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice was thick with emotion. Your father asked me the same thing once, before his last deployment. He said, Mama, why do we keep going back? Why do we keep fighting for people we've never met? Do you know what I told him? Danny shook his head. I told him that's what makes us human. We fight for each other, even when it's hard, even when it hurts, because if we don't, then what's the point of any of it? Danny leaned against her. Daddy was brave. Yes, he was. And so are you. Eleanor kissed the top of his head. So are you. The door opened. Agent Moreno entered, her face tight with tension. We've got a problem. What kind of problem? Sheriff Benson. He made contact with his people. They know we're coming. Moreno crossed to the window, looking out at the gathered bikers. The boat's been moved up. They're not waiting until midnight anymore. They're leaving at noon. Danny felt his stomach drop. That's in 2 hours. Less than that, hour and 45 minutes. Then we go now. The voice came from behind them. Danny turned. Viper stood in the doorway, leaning heavily on a crutch, his hospital gown replaced by jeans and a borrowed leather vest. His face was gray with pain, but his eyes were clear. What are you doing out of bed? Moreno demanded. My job. Viper limped into the room. I've talked to every chapter president in the region. We've got over 200 riders ready to move. Thunder's coordinating routes to bypass the main highways. Memphis chapter knows a back way into Copper Harbor that Benson doesn't know about. You're in no condition to. I'm in the only condition that matters. Viper met her gaze. Those kids are on that boat because of me, because I got caught, because I wasn't careful enough. His voice cracked. I'm not letting them disappear. Not while I'm still breathing. Danny stepped forward. I'm going too. Everyone turned to look at him. Absolutely not, Eleanor said. Danny, this isn't a game, Moreno added. These are dangerous people. I know. Danny's voice was calm. I know they're dangerous. I've seen what they can do, but those kids are scared. They don't know anyone's coming for them, and they don't know anyone cares. He looked at Viper. I was scared too when I found you, but you told me about the tunnels. You gave me a reason to be brave. Maybe I can do that for them. Viper studied the boy's face. 7 years old, 70 pounds soaking wet, eyes that had seen too much and still hadn't learned to look away. He's not going into the harbor, Viper said finally, but he could wait with the support team, be there when we bring the kids out. He looked at Moreno. Sometimes the first face a rescued child sees matters more than anything else. A kid their own age, someone who understands what it's like to be scared. That could make a difference. Moreno shook her head. This is insane. This whole situation is insane, Viper replied. But here we are. Eleanor gripped Danny's shoulder. Her face was a war between fear and pride. If anything happens to him, it won't. Viper's voice was absolute. I'll die before I let anyone touch that kid again. Every man out there will. Eleanor looked at Danny, her grandson, her only family, the last piece of her son she had left. You want to do this? Danny nodded. I have to. Eleanor closed her eyes. When she opened them, there were tears on her cheeks. Then we go together. Mrs. Hartwell, Moreno started, I'm not letting my grandson out of my sight. Where he goes, I go. Eleanor's voice left no room for argument. Now are we going to stand here talking, or are we going to save some children? Viper almost smiled. I see where the kid gets it from. They moved as a group toward the elevator. Outside, the rumble of engines was growing louder as more bikes arrived. Danny's hand found his grandmother's. Her fingers closed around his warm and strong. Whatever was coming next, they would face it together, the way family was supposed to. The convoy stretched for nearly a mile, 217 motorcycles according to Thunder's count, plus a dozen support vehicles, 3 ambulances, and a mobile command unit that Agent Moreno had requisitioned from the FBI field office in Nashville. Danny rode in one of the support vehicles with his grandmother watching through the window as the bikes moved in perfect formation. The sound was like nothing he had ever heard, a continuous roar that seemed to make the air itself vibrate. "There's so many of them," he said again. Beside him, Moreno was on her radio coordinating with law enforcement agencies across 3 states. The operation had grown beyond anything she'd originally planned. Local police, state troopers, Coast Guard cutters, all converging on Copper Harbor. "The boat's called the Northern Star," Moreno told them between calls. "It's registered to a shell company in Panama, but we've traced it back to the same network that's been moving children across the border for years. If we can stop it here, we don't just save these 12 kids. We blow open the whole operation." "And Sheriff Benson?" Eleanor asked. "He's at the harbor. Satellite surveillance confirmed it 20 minutes ago. He's got maybe a dozen men with him. They don't know we're coming." "They'll know soon," Viper's voice crackled over the radio from somewhere near the front of the convoy. 30 minutes out. Everyone hold formation." Danny pressed his hand against the window, watching the bikes ahead of them. The riders came from all walks of life, he realized. Some were young, barely out of their teens. Others were older than his grandmother. Some wore full leather covered in patches. Others wore simple vests over work clothes. But they all rode together, all moved as one. "Mr. Viper," Danny said into the radio Moreno had given him. "Yeah, kid, I'm here." "Are you scared?" Static crackled. Then Viper's voice softer than before. "Yeah, Danny, I'm scared. Only a fool wouldn't be." "Then how do you keep going?" A long pause. "I think about why I'm doing it, not for glory, not for revenge, for those kids who are counting on someone to come for them. For you who gave me a second chance when I didn't deserve one. For my son who never got the chance to grow up and do something like this." Viper's voice cracked slightly. "Fear's not the enemy, kid. Giving up is. As long as you keep moving forward, fear can't beat you." Danny absorbed that, filed it away with all the other things his father had taught him, the things his grandmother had shown him, the things he was learning every minute of this impossible day. "Mr. Viper." "Yeah. Thank you for letting me be part of this." "Thank me when it's over, kid. We've still got a lot of road ahead." The convoy roared on toward Copper Harbor. And somewhere ahead, 12 children waited in darkness, not knowing that help was coming, not knowing that an army of angels was on its way. The convoy stopped 3 miles from Copper Harbor. Thunder's voice came over the radio, low and urgent. "We got a problem. Scout team just reported back. Benson's got more men than we thought, at least 30, maybe 40. They've set up a perimeter around the dock." Viper swore under his breath. "How'd he get that many?" "Called in favors, hired guns. Some of them look ex-military." Thunder paused. "They know we're coming, brother. Someone tipped them off." Agent Moreno grabbed her radio. "That's impossible. Only my team knew the route." "Then you've got a leak." Silence filled the support vehicle. Danny watched Moreno's face go from confusion to fury in the span of 2 heartbeats. "Everyone switch to backup frequency. Now, channel 7. "Already done," Thunder replied. "But it doesn't matter. They're dug in. We try a frontal assault, we lose people. Maybe a lot of people." Danny's grandmother pulled him closer. Her hand trembled against his shoulder. Viper's voice cut through the tension. "What about the back way, the route Memphis chapter knows?" "Blocked. They've got trucks across the access road. No way through." "Then we make a way." "Viper, those kids don't have time for us to come up with a perfect plan. The boat's leaving in less than an hour. Every minute we sit here talking is a minute closer to them disappearing forever." Viper's voice cracked with something raw. "I won't let that happen. Not again." Danny picked up his radio before anyone could stop him. "Mr. Viper." "Danny, stay off the channel. What if they don't know about all of us?" "Silence." "What do you mean, kid? Danny's mind raced, piecing together fragments of conversations, things he'd overheard, things that didn't quite fit. The man at my grandma's house, the one on the phone. He said they were watching the main roads, but he didn't say anything about the water. Moreno leaned forward. Danny, what are you getting at? Agent Moreno, you said the Coast Guard was coming. Where are they now? Moreno checked her tablet. Still 20 minutes out. They won't make it in time. But Benson doesn't know that. He thinks the attack is coming from the road. That's why all his men are facing that direction. Danny's heart pounded. What if some of the bikes went around through the woods while everyone else makes noise at the front? Thunder's voice came back thoughtful now. Kid might be onto something. There's an old logging trail that runs parallel to the shore. Hasn't been used in years, but bikes could make it through. How many? Viper asked. Maybe 30, 40 if we push it. Everyone else creates a distraction at the main entrance, draws their attention, keeps them focused on the wrong thing. And the 40 who go through the woods, they hit the dock from behind, fast and hard. Grab the kids before Benson knows what's happening. Moreno shook her head. This is insane. We're talking about civilians assaulting an armed position. People will get hurt. People are already hurt, Viper's voice was steel. 12 children are sitting in the dark right now, waiting to be sold to monsters. You want to talk about risk, talk to them. The radio crackled with other voices now. Chapter presidents checking in. Memphis, Knoxville, Nashville, Birmingham, all asking the same question. What's the play? Thunder answered. We split up. Main group hits the front, makes as much noise as possible. Strike team goes through the woods, hits the dock. Everyone else holds the perimeter, makes sure nobody gets out. And the kids, that's the priority. Everything else is secondary. We get those children off that boat, whatever it takes. Danny felt his grandmother's grip tighten. He looked up at her. I want to go with the strike team. Absolutely not. Grandma, Danny, I have let you do a lot of things in the last 24 hours. I have watched you save a stranger's life, get kidnapped by criminals, and ride across Tennessee with a motorcycle gang. But I am not, her voice broke. I am not letting you walk into a gunfight. I won't be in the fight, I'll stay back. But when they bring the kids out, someone needs to be there. Someone who understands what they're feeling. Danny's eyes were steady, older than his years. You said Daddy fought for people he never met. This is me fighting. This is me being his son. Eleanor's face crumpled. Tears spilled down her cheeks. You're 7 years old. I know. You should be worried about school and cartoons and what's for dinner. I know. I hate this. I hate all of this. I know, Grandma. Danny reached up and touched her face. But those kids are younger than me, some of them. And they're so scared. I can feel it. I can help them. Please, let me help them. Eleanor looked at her grandson. Her daughter-in-law had abandoned him. Her son had died for strangers. And now this child, this beautiful, impossible child, was asking to do the same thing. She wanted to say no. She wanted to lock him in the car and drive away and never look back. But she saw her son in his eyes. She saw his courage. His stubborn, reckless, wonderful courage. You stay behind the line, she whispered. You don't move until they tell you it's safe. You promise me, Danny. You promise me on your father's memory. I promise, Wisty. Eleanor pulled him into a fierce embrace. I love you more than anything in this world. I love you too, Grandma. Moreno watched the exchange, something shifting in her expression. When they separated, she crouched down to Danny's level. You're either the bravest kid I've ever met or the craziest. Maybe both. A ghost of a smile crossed her face. Maybe both. She stood up. He rides with me. Rear of the strike team, non-negotiable. Understood. Viper's voice came over the radio. Danny, you hear me? Yes, sir. You do exactly what Agent Moreno tells you. No heroics, no running off. Those kids need you alive, you understand? I understand. Good. A pause. And Danny? Yeah. I'm proud of you, kid. Your dad would be proud too. Danny's throat tightened. He couldn't speak. He just keyed the radio twice, the universal signal for message received. Thunder's voice boomed across all channels. All right, brothers, you know the plan. Main group, you're with me. Strike team, you're with Bear. Support vehicles hang back until we give the all clear. He paused. Some of you might be wondering why we're doing this. Why we're risking our lives for kids we've never met. I'll tell you why, because that's who we are. The world looks at us and sees outlaws, criminals, monsters, but we know the truth. We know that family isn't just blood, it's choice. And today we choose those children. Today we show the world what Hell's Angels really stand for. Engines roared to life. The thunder rolled across the Tennessee hills like a war cry. Let's ride. The logging trail was barely a trail at all. Rocks and roots and fallen branches made every yard a battle. Danny gripped the seat as Moreno's SUV bounced and jerked through the undergrowth following the line of motorcycles ahead. Bear led the strike team, his massive frame hunched over his bike as he navigated terrain that would have stopped most vehicles cold. 43 riders followed him, handpicked from every chapter present. The best of the best. Danny's radio crackled. Thunder's voice distant now. Main group is in position, ready to make some noise. Copy that, Bear replied. Strike team is 2 minutes out. Hold until we're in position. Holding. The woods thinned. Through the trees, Danny caught glimpses of water. Copper Harbor spread out below them, a crescent of docks and warehouses that had seen better days. And there at the far end of the largest pier sat the Northern Star. It was bigger than Danny had imagined, rust-streaked and weathered but big. Big enough to hide 12 children, big enough to carry them away forever. I see the boat, Danny said quietly. We all see it, Moreno replied. Now we just need to get to it. Bear's voice came over the radio. Strike team dismount here. We go the rest of the way on foot. Quieter that way. The bike stopped. Riders swung off, moving with a discipline that surprised Danny. These weren't just outlaws. These were soldiers. Men who had served, who had trained, who knew how to move and fight and work as a unit. Viper appeared beside the SUV, leaning heavily on a makeshift crutch fashioned from a tree branch. His face was gray with pain, but his eyes burned. You shouldn't be here, Moreno told him. Neither should you. Neither should any of us. Viper looked toward the harbor. But here we are. Bear approached, his voice low. Scouts report 12 guards on the dock, 8 more on the boat. Benson's in the warehouse with the rest of his men waiting for us to hit the front. And the children, below deck, cargo hold most likely. That's where they usually keep them. Usually. The word made Danny's stomach turn. What's the play? Viper asked. We hit the dock guards first, fast and quiet. Then we board the ship, secure the children, and signal the main group to move in. Bear's jaw tightened. We've got maybe 10 minutes before Benson realizes what's happening. After that, it gets messy. Then we don't waste time. Viper pushed off from the SUV. I'm going with you. Brother, you can barely walk. I can walk enough. Viper's voice left no room for argument. Those kids are down there because I failed. I'm going to be there when they come out. End of discussion. Bear studied him for a long moment. Then he nodded. Stay behind me. For God's sake, don't get shot. I don't want to explain to the kid why his hero died being stupid. Something almost like a smile crossed Viper's face. Wouldn't dream of it. The strike team moved out, flowing through the trees like shadows. Danny watched them go, his heart pounding. Now we wait, Moreno said. I hate waiting. Everyone does. She checked her weapon for the 3rd time. But sometimes waiting is the hardest part of being brave. Danny pressed his face to the window, watching the harbor below. Somewhere down there, 12 children were counting the minutes until their lives changed forever. They just didn't know which way yet. The first shot came at 11:47 a.m. Danny heard it echo across the water, sharp and final. Then another. Then 3 more in rapid succession. Strike team is engaged, someone reported over the radio. Dock guards are down, moving to the boat. Thunder's voice, main group, go, go, go. The roar of engines exploded from the other side of the harbor. Danny saw the convoy pour through the main entrance bikes, spreading out like a wave, drawing every eye, every gun. Benson's men are moving to intercept. Moreno reported her tablet, showing real-time satellite feeds. They're taking the bait. Strike team has a clear path to the boat. Danny held his breath. On the dock below, he could see shapes moving. The strike team boarding the Northern Star. Gunfire crackled from somewhere inside the ship. Contact on the boat, Bear's voice strained. They've got more men than we thought. We're pinned down on the main deck. How many? At least 15, maybe 20. They were waiting for us. Viper's voice cut in. It's a trap. Benson knew we'd split our forces. He kept his best men on the boat. Then we pushed through. Bear grunted, and Danny heard more gunfire in the background. We didn't come this far to stop now. Danny's hands were shaking. He pressed them flat against his legs, trying to steady himself. Agent Moreno. Yeah, the children. If the bad guys know they're losing, what will they do? Moreno's face went pale. She grabbed her radio. Bear, you need to get to that cargo hold now. If they think they're losing, they might... I know. Bear's voice was grim. We're trying. They've got the hatch covered. Danny's mind raced. 12 children. Trapped in darkness. Armed men above them. And time running out. He reached for the door handle. Danny, no. But he was already out of the SUV, already running. Danny. He didn't stop. Couldn't stop. His feet carried him down the slope through the trees toward the water. Behind him, he heard Moreno shouting, heard boots crashing through underbrush, but he didn't slow down. The dock was chaos. Bodies on the ground, men fighting hand to hand. The crack of gunfire and the roar of motorcycles mixing into a single wall of sound. Danny ran past it all. He reached the gangway of the Northern Star and sprinted up his small feet, pounding on the metal. A man stepped out of nowhere, gun raised, and Danny ducked under his arm and kept going. Someone shouted behind him. More gunfire. But Danny was already through a door, already inside the ship. Dark corridors, the smell of rust and oil, and something worse. Something human. Danny followed the smell. He found a ladder leading down. He took it without thinking, dropping into a deeper darkness. Emergency lights flickered, casting everything in red. And then he heard them. Crying. Soft, muffled crying. Hello, Danny called out. Is anyone there? The crying stopped. Silence. My name is Danny. I'm 7 years old. I came to help you. Nothing, then a small voice. Are you real? Danny moved toward the sound, feeling his way along the wall. His hand found a door. Locked. I'm real. I promise I'm real. How many of you are in there? 12, a different voice now, older maybe. They locked us in when the shooting started. I'm going to get you out. Just hold on. Danny looked at the lock. Heavy. Industrial. Way too strong for a 7-year-old to break. But there had to be another way. He searched the corridor, his eyes adjusting to the dim light. There. A fire extinguisher mounted on the wall. Heavy. Metal. Danny grabbed it, straining under the weight, and swung it at the lock. Clang. Again. Clang. Again. Clang. The lock held. Danny's arms burned, but he kept swinging. Come on, he gasped. Come on, come on. The lock shattered. Danny dropped the extinguisher and yanked the door open. 12 faces stared back at him, children all of them. The youngest couldn't have been more than 5. The oldest, maybe 10, dirty, terrified, eyes wide with disbelief. You're just a kid, the oldest one whispered. Yeah. Danny was breathing hard, but he managed to smile. But I'm the kid who found you. Now come on. We need to get out of here. The children didn't move. They were frozen, too scared to believe this was real. Danny reached out his hand to the youngest, a little girl with matted hair and tear-stained cheeks. What's your name? Lily. Hi, Lily. I'm Danny. I know you're scared. I was scared too. But there are people up there who came to save you. Big, scary-looking guys on motorcycles. But they're not really scary. They're heroes. He kept his hand extended. Will you come with me? Lily looked at his hand, then at his face. Then slowly she reached out and took it. Okay. The other children followed. One by one, they filed out of the cargo hold, clustering around Danny like he was the only light in a dark world. Stay close to me, Danny said. And whatever you do, don't let go of each other. They moved through the corridor in a chain hand-clasping hand. Danny led the way, following the path he'd taken, praying he could remember it. The ladder was ahead. He could see light above. We have to climb. Can everyone climb? Nods. Frightened nods, but nods. Good. I'll go first. Then Lily. Then everyone else. One at a time. Okay. Danny started up the ladder. His hands were slick with sweat, but he gripped the rungs and pulled himself up. He was halfway to the top when a shadow fell across the opening. Well, what do we have here? Danny looked up. Sheriff Benson stood at the top of the ladder, gun in hand, smile on his face. The little hero himself. You know, kid, you have caused me a lot of trouble. Danny froze. Below him, the children whimpered. Let us go, Danny said. His voice shook, but he didn't look away. It's over. Your men are losing. The FBI is everywhere. Maybe. Benson's smile didn't waver. But I've still got you, all of you, in a boat with a full tank of game. He gestured with the gun. Now climb, slowly. Try anything and I start shooting. Danny had no choice. He climbed. When he reached the top, Benson grabbed him by the collar and yanked him onto the deck. The children followed one by one, Benson herding them toward the bridge. You should have stayed home, kid. Should have kept your mouth shut and let the grown-ups handle things. Benson's grip tightened. But no, you had to be a hero, just like your daddy. Danny's blood went cold. How do you know about my daddy? I know everything, kid. I know your daddy was Army. I know he died overseas. I know your mama ran off and left you with that stubborn old woman. Benson leaned close. I know you're alone in this world. And I know that nobody's coming to save you. You're wrong, Benson laughed. I look around. Your biker friends are fighting for their lives out there. The FBI's too busy trying to figure out who's winning. And you're here with me holding a dozen kids who are about to disappear forever. He shoved Danny toward the bridge door. Face it, hero. You lost. Danny stumbled, catching himself on the doorframe. The children huddled behind him, crying. He had to think, had to find a way out. But his mind was blank. Just fear. Just the cold barrel of Benson's gun pressing against his back. They entered the bridge. Benson moved to the controls, keeping his weapon trained on the children. Everyone sit down. Against that wall. Now. The children obeyed, sinking to the floor. Danny stayed standing. You too, hero? No. Benson's eyebrows rose. Excuse me. I said no. Danny's voice steadied. He didn't know where the courage came from. Maybe from his father. Maybe from his grandmother. Maybe from Viper lying in that hospital bed refusing to give up. You can shoot me if you want, but I'm not sitting down, and I'm not letting you take these kids anywhere. Benson stared at him. Something flickered in his eyes. Confusion, maybe? Or disbelief. You've got guts, kid. I'll give you that. He raised the gun. But guts don't stop bullets. Danny closed his eyes. Daddy, he thought, I tried. I really tried. The shot never came. Instead, there was a crash, glass shattering, a body hurtling through the bridge window. Viper. He hit Benson like a freight train, driving him to the ground. The gun went flying. The two men grappled Viper's injured body, fighting through pain that should have stopped him cold. Danny, Viper shouted, get the kids out now. Danny didn't hesitate. He grabbed Lily's hand and pulled. Come on, everyone move. They ran, out of the bridge, across the deck, toward the gangway where more bikers were now streaming aboard, finally breaking through Benson's defenses. Bear met them at the rail, his face bloody but triumphant. You got them, his voice cracked. You actually got them. Mr. Viper's still inside Benson. We've got him. Go. Get these kids to safety. Danny led the children down the gangway onto the dock into the waiting arms of paramedics and FBI agents and bikers who looked at the children with tears in their eyes. Eleanor was there. She ran toward Danny and swept him up, holding him so tight he couldn't breathe. I thought I lost you. I thought, I'm okay, Grandma. I'm okay. Behind them, more bikers emerged from the boat, and then finally Viper. He was being carried by Bear and two other riders, his face gray, his eyes barely open. Blood soaked through the bandages on his chest. Mr. Viper. Danny broke free from his grandmother and ran to him. Viper's eyes found Danny. A weak smile crossed his battered face. You did it, kid. You saved them. You saved me. That's what family does. Viper's hand found Danny, squeezing weakly. That's what family does. The paramedics rushed in, loading Viper onto a stretcher. As they carried him away, Danny heard him say something to Bear. Keep the kids safe, no matter what. Always, brother, always. Danny stood on the dock, surrounded by cow and crying children and the thunder of motorcycles. His grandmother's arms wrapped around him. 12 rescued faces looked at him with something like wonder. He had done it. But as the ambulance doors closed on Viper's broken body, Danny knew something else. This wasn't over. Sheriff Benson was in custody. But the man who had created this network, the one who had funded it, who had protected it from the shadows, he was still out there. And he would be coming for revenge. Viper flatlined twice on the way to the hospital. Danny heard it over the radio, the paramedics calling out codes, the frantic rhythm of SAP, the long, terrible silences between radio updates. Eleanor held him tight in the back of the FBI vehicle, her hand pressed over his ear as if she could block out the sound of a man dying. "He's going to be okay," Danny whispered. "He has to be okay. Sweetheart, he promised. He said he'd find me when it was over. He promised." Eleanor had no words. She just held her grandson and prayed to a God she'd been angry with since her son died. Please, not again, not this boy, not this man who gave him hope. The hospital was a fortress when they arrived. FBI agents at every entrance, state police cruisers blocking the roads, and motorcycles. Hundreds of them filling the parking lot, spilling onto the streets, their riders standing in silent vigil. Thunder met them at the emergency room doors. The big man's face was drawn, his leather vest stained with blood that wasn't his. "How is he?" Danny asked before anyone could stop him. "In surgery. They're doing everything they can." Thunder's voice was rough. "Kid, what you did back there. I don't care about what I did. I care about Mr. Viper." Thunder looked at Danny for a long moment. Then he did something unexpected. He knelt down, bringing himself to the boy's eye level. "Listen to me. Marcus Donovan is the toughest man I've ever known. He survived 3 tours in a war zone, survived losing his son, survived 18 months undercover with people who would have killed him slow if they'd found out what he was doing." Thunder put his hand onto Danny's shoulder. "He's not going to let some corrupt sheriff be the thing that takes him down. Not when he's got a reason to live." "What reason? You, kid. You're his reason." Danny's eyes burned. He wouldn't cry. He'd cried enough for one lifetime. "Can I wait for him?" "You can wait as long as you need." They set up in a private waiting room on the surgical floor. Eleanor sat with Danny, her arm around him, watching the door like it might hold answers. Agent Moreno came and went, taking phone calls, coordinating the aftermath of the raid. The 12 children had been transported to a separate facility for medical evaluation and reunification with their families. Danny had asked about them twice. Moreno had told him they were safe. That was all that mattered. 3 hours passed, then 4. Danny had almost fallen asleep against his grandmother's shoulder when the door opened and a surgeon walked in. Her scrubs were stained, her face was exhausted, but her eyes held something that made Danny's heart leap. "He's stable, how?" Eleanor's hand flew to her mouth. "He lost a lot of blood. The damage to his chest wall was extensive, but we managed to repair the worst of it." The surgeon looked at Danny. "He was conscious for a few minutes before we put him under. He asked about a boy named Danny, said to tell him he kept his promise." Danny's legs gave out. He would have fallen if Thunder hadn't caught him. "Can I see him? He's in recovery. It'll be about a few hours before he's awake enough for visitors." The surgeon's expression softened. "But I think he'd want you there when he wakes up." "I'll wait. I know you will." The surgeon left. Danny sat back down, his whole body shaking with relief. Viper was alive. The nightmare was over. Except it wasn't. Agent Moreno burst through the door 20 minutes later, her face white. "We have a problem." Eleanor stood up. "What now?" "Benson's talking. He made a deal with federal prosecutors. Immunity in exchange for information about the trafficking network." Moreno's jaw was tight. "He gave us a name. The person running the whole operation. The one who set everything up, who protected them from investigation for years." "Who?" Moreno hesitated. Her eyes flicked to Danny, then back to Eleanor. "Judge Harold Whitmore." The name hit Eleanor like a physical blow. She staggered back, her hand finding the wall for support. "No, that's impossible." "Grandma," Danny looked up at her. "Who's Judge Whitmore?" Eleanor couldn't speak. Her face had gone gray. Moreno answered for her. "Judge Harold Whitmore has been on the federal bench for 32 years. He oversees cases across 3 states, including..." She stopped. "Including what?" "Including the court that handled your father's military benefits and your mother's custody abandonment." Moreno's voice was gentle but firm. "Mrs. Hartwell, how well do you know Judge Whitmore?" "He was my husband's friend." Eleanor's voice was barely a whisper. "They served together 40 years ago. He came to my son's funeral. He came to my husband's funeral." Her legs buckled. Thunder guided her to a chair. He's been to my house. He's held Danny. He sent flowers when she couldn't finish. Danny's mind raced, trying to piece together what this meant. Grandma, are you saying the bad guy is someone we know? I'm saying the man who helped those monsters take children has been pretending to be our friend for 40 years. Eleanor's voice cracked. I'm saying I trusted him, and he's been a monster the whole time. Moreno crouched beside her. Mrs. Hartwell, we need to move you and Danny to a secure location. If Whitmore knows Benson talked, he knows. Thunder's voice was grim. Man like that, he's got people everywhere. Probably knew within minutes of Benson opening his mouth. Then we need to move. Now. But before anyone could respond, the lights went out. Emergency lighting kicked in, casting everything in dim red. Alarms began to blare. What's happening? Danny grabbed his grandmother's hand. Moreno was already on her radio. All units report. What's going on? Static. All units respond. Nothing. Thunder pulled a gun from somewhere inside his vest. We've got company. The door burst open. But it wasn't enemies. It was Bear bleeding from a gash on his forehead, 2 other bikers behind him. They hit the perimeter, at least 20 men, professional military-grade weapons. They're coming for the kid. How did they get past? They had help, someone on the inside. Someone who knew exactly where our people were stationed. Bear's eyes were wild. Thunder, we've got maybe 2 minutes before they breach this floor. Thunder grabbed Danny and lifted him like he weighed nothing. Back, stairs, move. They ran. The hospital corridors were chaos. Patients screaming, staff scrambling, the sound of gunfire echoing from somewhere below. Eleanor couldn't keep up. Her age and the trauma of the past 2 days had taken their toll. She stumbled and Bear caught her, throwing her over his shoulder in a fireman's carry. I've got you, ma'am. Just hold on. They hit the stairwell. Thunder leading Danny in his arms. Moreno behind them, gun drawn. Bear and Eleanor bringing up the rear with the other bikers covering their retreat. 3 floors down, then 2. Almost there, Thunder grunted. Basement level. There's an exit that leads to the loading dock. We've got bikes waiting. They burst through the basement door and stopped. Judge Harold Whitmore stood in the center of the corridor, flanked by 6 men in tactical gear. He was a distinguished-looking man, silver-haired, well-dressed, with the kind of face that belonged on currency. Hello, Eleanor. His voice was calm, almost pleasant. It's been too long. Thunder set Danny down and stepped in front of him. Get out of our way. I'm afraid I can't do that. You see, the boy is a complication, a loose end, and I've built my entire career on not leaving loose ends. You're surrounded by federal agents. Your operation is blown. It's over. Is it? Whitmore smiled. The wonderful thing about being a federal judge is that you know exactly which agents can be trusted and which can be persuaded. Agent Moreno is incorruptible, I'll grant you that. But she's also the only one on this floor who isn't already on my payroll. Moreno's face went pale. That's impossible. Is it check your radio again? Moreno keyed her volume. All units respond. Silence. You see, I've been running this network for 30 years. Do you really think I didn't plan for every contingency? Whitmore's gaze shifted to Danny, still half hidden behind Thunder's massive frame. The boy is remarkable, I'll admit. Finding Marcus was bad luck. But what he did at the harbor, that was something else entirely. Courage like that is rare. Stay away from him. Eleanor's voice shook with fury. You monster. You absolute monster. You came to my son's funeral. You held my grandson when he was a baby. And the whole time I was building something necessary. Whitmore's tone hardened. Do you have any idea what the world is really like? Eleanor? The things that happen in the shadows. Someone has to manage it. Someone has to make the hard choices. The children I moved, they would have ended up in worse places. At least my network placed them with families who wanted them, who paid well for them. You sold children. I reallocated resources. There's a difference. Danny stepped out from behind Thunder. Danny, no, Eleanor started. You're lying. Danny's voice was steady. The fear was there underneath, but something stronger held it down. Those kids on the boat were terrified. They weren't going to families. They were going to monsters. Whitmore studied the boy with something like curiosity. You really are remarkable. Your father was the same way, stubborn, righteous, absolutely convinced that he could make a difference. He sighed. It got him killed, you know. Not the official story, of course, but the real one. He found something he shouldn't have found, asked questions he shouldn't have asked, and I had to make certain decisions. The world stopped. Danny felt the words before he understood them, felt them like a knife sliding between his ribs. What did you say? Your father's death wasn't random, Danny. It wasn't enemy fire. It was a cleanup operation. My cleanup operation. Whitmore's smile was cold. He was getting too close to understanding how military supply chains were being used to move product. Human product. I couldn't allow that. Eleanor screamed, a raw animal sound of grief and rage that echoed off the basement walls. Thunder moved, faster than a man his size should have been able to. But Whitmore's men were faster. Guns came up. Triggers pulled. Thunder took 2 rounds to the chest and kept coming. He crashed into the first guard, taking them both to the ground. Bear dropped Eleanor and charged, roaring like his namesake. Chaos erupted. Danny felt someone grab him, Moreno pulling him back toward the stairwell. Move, Danny, move. But Danny couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't think. My father, he killed my father, everything he'd believed, everything he'd held on to for 2 years. The memory of his father as a hero who died saving his friends. The pride he'd carried like armor. A lie. All of it. His father had been murdered by a man who'd smiled at him over Sunday dinners. Something broke inside Danny, something fundamental, and something else rose up to take its place. Rage. He pulled free from Moreno and ran, not away, toward Whitmore. The judge saw him coming and laughed, actually laughed. What are you going to do, boy? You're 7 years old. You can't. Danny hit him in the knee, hard, with every ounce of strength his small body possessed. Whitmore's leg buckled. He went down with a cry of shock and pain. Danny didn't stop. He climbed onto the man's chest, his small fists pounding at Whitmore's face. You killed him. You killed my daddy. You killed him. Each word was a blow. Each blow was a lifetime of grief finally finding its target. Whitmore threw him off, but Danny scrambled back ready to charge it again. You little... A shot rang out. Whitmore froze. Standing at the end of the corridor, supported by 2 nurses and wearing nothing but a hospital gown, was Viper. In his hand was a gun he'd taken from somewhere. His face was death gray, blood soaked through the bandages on his chest, but his hand was steady. Marcus. Whitmore's voice changed, uncertain now. You're supposed to be in recovery. Yeah, well, I've never been good at following orders. Viper limped forward, the nurses trying to hold him back. He shrugged them off. Let the kid go, Harold. It's over. Nothing is over. I have resources you can't imagine. People in every agency, I recorded it. Whitmore went still. Everything you just said, the confession about Danny's father, the admission about the network, the threat against a child. Viper held up a small device in his other hand, live streamed to every news outlet in the country. You're done. For the first time, Whitmore's composure cracked. His face contorted with fury. You're bluffing. Am I? Viper's voice was cold. Check your phone. One of Whitmore's men pulled out a device. His face went white. Sir, it's everywhere. Every channel, every website. They're showing your face. Whitmore lunged for Danny. Viper fired. The bullet took Whitmore in the shoulder, spinning him around. He hit the ground, screaming, clutching the wound. That's for the kids you sold. Viper limped closer, gun still raised. This next one's for Danny's father. Marcus, don't, Moreno's voice cut through. He needs to stand trial. The world needs to see him answer for what he's done. Viper's finger tightened on the trigger. His whole body shook with the effort of staying upright, staying conscious, staying focused. He killed a good man. He terrorized a child. He sold kids into slavery. Viper's voice cracked. Give me one reason not to end him right now. Because Danny's watching. Viper's eyes moved to Danny. The boy stood, frozen tears streaming down his face, watching the man who'd saved him prepare to commit murder. Danny. Viper's voice softened. Close your eyes. No, Danny. You told me being brave means doing the right thing even when it's hard. Danny's voice shook, but he didn't look away. Killing him isn't the right thing, even if he deserves it. Even if I want you to. Viper stared at the boy. His hand trembled. The gun wavered. He killed your father. I know. Danny wiped his face with his sleeve. And I'll hate him forever. But my daddy didn't die so I could watch someone become a murderer. He died because he believed in good things, in doing what's right. Danny took a shaky breath. If you kill him, you're not the person I thought you were. And I don't want that. I want you to be the hero. Please, Mr. Viper. Please be the hero. The basement went silent. Viper looked at Danny, then at Whitmore writhing on the ground, then at the gun in his hand. Slowly, painfully, he lowered the weapon. Someone cuffed this piece of garbage before I changed my mind. Moreno moved fast, restraining Whitmore while Baron Thunder's men secured the remaining guards. Sirens wailed in the distance, reinforcements finally arriving. Viper swayed. The gun dropped from his fingers. His legs gave out. Danny caught him, or tried to. The boy couldn't hold the weight, but he slowed the fall enough that Viper landed on his knees instead of his face. Hey! Danny crouched beside him. Hey, stay with me. You can't die. You promised. Viper's eyes were glassy. I'm not dying, kid. Just tired. Then rest. I'll protect you this time. A broken laugh escaped Viper's lips. Yeah, I bet you would. The medics rushed in. They tried to move Danny aside, but he refused to leave. He held Viper's hand as they worked, just like he'd held it in the forest, just like he'd held it in the hospital room. Mr. Viper. Yeah, kid. Thank you for not killing him, for listening to me. Viper's eyes met Danny's. Something passed between them, something that didn't need words. Thank you for giving me a reason not to. They loaded Viper onto a stretcher. Danny walked alongside, still holding his hand, until the elevator doors closed and separated them. Eleanor gathered her grandson in her arms. They stood in the basement corridor surrounded by Kea, watching the man who'd destroyed their lives being dragged away in handcuffs. It's over, Eleanor whispered. It's finally over. But Danny knew better. Some things were never really over. They just changed into something else. But the next 72 hours were a blur. Judge Harold Whitmore's arrest made international news. The footage Viper had broadcast played on every network, analyzed and replayed until every word was seared into the public consciousness. 32 years of corruption exposed in a single confession. The network collapsed within days. Arrests across 4 states. Hundreds of children traced and recovered. Officials at every level of government resigning or being removed in handcuffs. And at the center of it all, the story everyone couldn't stop talking about: a 7-year-old boy who'd stumbled upon a Hell's Angel chained to a tree and somehow brought down one of the largest trafficking operations in American history. Danny didn't feel like a hero. He felt tired and sad and confused. The truth about his father's death had changed everything. The noble sacrifice he'd clung to for 2 years was a lie. His dad hadn't died saving friends. He'd been murdered for getting too close to the truth. In some ways, that made him more of a hero than before. He'd died trying to protect children he'd never meet. In other ways, it made everything worse. 3 days after Whitmore's arrest, Danny finally got to see Viper again. The hospital room was quiet. Machines beeped softly. Sunlight filtered through the blinds. Viper lay in the bed propped up on pillows, looking better than he had any right to look after everything he'd been through. Hey, kid. Hey, Mr. Viper. Danny climbed into the chair beside the bed. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. How are you holding up? Viper asked. I don't know. Danny stared at his hands. Everyone keeps telling me I'm a hero, but I don't feel like one. I feel like everything I believed was wrong. What do you mean, my daddy? I thought he died fighting bad guys in a war. I thought he was a soldier who gave his life for his country. Danny's voice cracked. But he wasn't fighting in a war. He was murdered by someone we trusted, and nobody even knew. For 2 years, nobody knew the truth. Viper was quiet for a moment. Danny, can I tell you something about your dad? Danny looked up. I didn't know him personally, but I know men like him, served with them, fought beside them. Viper shifted in the bed, wincing slightly. Here's the thing about soldiers who discover things they shouldn't. They have a choice. They can look the other way, pretend they didn't see anything, go home safe and sound, and live long, comfortable lives. But Daddy didn't do that. No, he didn't. He saw something evil and he chose to fight it, even though it meant risking everything, even though it got him killed. Viper reached out and put his hand on Danny's shoulder. That's not less heroic than dying in battle. That's more heroic. He wasn't just following orders. He was following his conscience. He died trying to protect children he'd never meet in a war nobody even knew was being fought. Danny felt tears sliding down his cheeks. Then why does it hurt so much? Yeah, because the truth always hurts, even when it's better than the lie. Viper squeezed his shoulder. But here's what you know, Danny. Your father would be proud of you. Not because you took down a trafficking network, not because you're on TV. He'd be proud because you had every chance to run and you didn't. You had every reason to be scared and you acted anyway. You finished what he started. I didn't do it alone. No one ever does. Viper smiled slightly. That's the whole point. Your dad had his brothers in arms. You had the Hells Angels. We all need people to stand with us when things get hard. He paused, which reminds me, there's something I need to talk to you about. What? Before Viper could answer, the door opened. Thunder walked in, followed by Bear, and behind them a stream of men in leather vests that seemed to go on forever. They filed into the room, filling every inch of available space, spilling out into the hallway. Danny's eyes went wide. What's going on? Thunder stepped forward. In his hands was something folded, leather, worn. Danny Hartwell, 6 days ago you found one of our brothers dying in the woods. You didn't run, you didn't hide. You gave him water, called for help, and stayed by his side when grown men would have fled. Danny looked at Viper, confused. Viper just nodded. In the days that followed, you showed more courage than most people show in a lifetime. You faced down killers. You rescued children. You stood up to a monster and refused to become one yourself. Thunder's voice carried weight. The Hells Angels have been around for a long time. We've seen a lot of brave people, but we've never seen anyone like you. He unfolded the leather. It was a vest. Small, child-sized. The Hells Angels patch on the back, and on the front a new patch Danny had never seen before. Little brother, Thunder said, that's what we call the ones we protect. The ones who belong to all of us, no matter what chapter, no matter what state. He held out the vest. Danny Hartwell, by unanimous vote of every chapter present at the Battle of Copper Harbor, you are hereby granted the title of Little Brother. You are under our protection for life. Any Hells Angel anywhere in the world is bound to help you if you need it. This is the highest honor we can give to someone outside the club. Danny's hands trembled as he took the vest. It was light in his hands, lighter than he expected. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything. Thunder's voice was rough with emotion. Just know that you're family now, and family doesn't forget. Danny looked around the room at the faces watching him. Rough men, scarred men. Men who looked like they'd been through things Danny couldn't imagine. And every single one of them was looking at him with something that looked a lot like love. He slipped on the vest. It fit perfectly. Thank you, he whispered. Thank you all. Bear stepped forward and did something unexpected. He knelt down, bringing himself to Danny's level, and extended his hand. It's an honor, little brother. Danny shook it. One by one, every man in the room came forward, shook his hand, clapped his shoulder, welcomed him into the brotherhood. When the last man had finished and filed out, Danny stood alone with Viper, Thunder, and Bear. There's one more thing, Viper said. What? Viper reached under his pillow and pulled out something small. Metal. Danny recognized it immediately. Dog tags. These were your father's, Viper said. Agent Moreno recovered them from Whitmore's personal safe. He kept them as a trophy. Viper's jaw tightened. I thought you should have them back. Danny took the tags. His father's name was stamped into the metal. Sergeant James Thomas Hartwell. His fingers closed around them. Thank you, Mr. Viper. Marcus? Danny looked up. We're family now, kid. Call me Marcus. Danny smiled, really smiled for the first time in days. Thank you, Marcus. Eleanor appeared in the doorway, tears streaming down her face. She'd watched the whole thing from the hall. Danny ran to her, the vest on his back, the dog tags in his hand. Grandma, look. I see, sweetheart. She held him tight. Your daddy would be so proud. He's so proud. Danny pressed his face into her shoulder. For the first time since all of this had started, he felt something he'd almost forgotten how to feel. Hope. 6 months changed everything. Danny Hartwell turned 8 years old in a hospital room surrounded by Hell's Angels, who sang happy birthday so badly that the nurses came running to check if someone was dying. Marcus was there, still recovering, still rebuilding the body that had been broken so many times, but there, always there. Make a wish, kid, Marcus said as Danny leaned over the cake. Danny closed his eyes. He didn't wish for toys or games or anything a normal 8-year-old might want. He wished for the same thing he'd wished for every night since Copper Harbor, that the children he'd saved would find families who loved them. He blew out the candles. What did you wish for? Bear asked. Can't tell. Then it won't come true. Smart kid. Thunder clapped him on the shoulder. Smarter than most of us anyway. The party lasted 3 hours. Bikers came and went. Nurses brought extra chairs. Eleanor sat in the corner watching her grandson laugh and joke with men who looked like they belonged in prison but treated Danny like royalty. When everyone else had left, Danny sat alone with Marcus. The room was quiet except for the beeping of machines. Marcus, yeah, what happens now? Marcus shifted in his bed. 6 months of surgeries and physical therapy had brought him a long way, but he still couldn't walk without help. The doctor said he might never ride again. What do you mean? I mean, everything's different. Whitmore's in prison. Benson's in prison. The kids are safe. Danny picked at the edge of his birthday cake. But I don't know what I'm supposed to do. Everyone keeps calling me a hero. Reporters want to talk to me. Schools want me to give speeches. But I'm just me. That's exactly why they want to talk to you. Marcus reached out and ruffled Danny's hair. You're just you, a kid who did the right thing without thinking about what he'd get for it. That's rare, Danny. Rarer than you know. I don't want to be rare. I want to be normal. Normal's overrated. Marcus's voice softened. But I get it. Fame is exhausting, especially when you didn't ask for it. Danny looked up at him. What are you going to do when you get out of here? Marcus was quiet for a long moment. I've been thinking about that a lot. And Pumpkin, I can't ride anymore. Can't do the things I used to do, but I've got skills, training, and I know what it feels like to be a kid with nowhere to turn. Marcus met Danny's eyes. I'm thinking about starting a program for kids who've been through what you went through, what those 12 kids went through, a place where they can talk to someone who understands, someone who won't judge them. Like a counselor. Yeah, something like that. Marcus smiled slightly. Agent Moreno's been helping me set it up. Turns out saving a bunch of kids from traffickers opens a lot of doors. Danny considered this. Can I help? You already have, kid, more than you know. No, I mean really help, like be part of it. Talk to kids who are scared. Danny's voice grew stronger. I know what it feels like to be scared and alone. I know what it feels like to think nobody's coming. Maybe I could tell them that somebody did come, that it gets better. Marcus stared at him for a long moment. You're 8 years old. So you should be playing video games and complaining about homework. Marcus, Danny's voice was patient, like he was explaining something obvious. I stopped being a regular kid the day I found you in those woods. I can't go back to that. I don't want to go back to that. I want to do something that matters. Marcus felt something shift in his chest, something that had been frozen for 15 years since his own son had died. You remind me of him, Marcus whispered. Who? My son, Tyler. Marcus's voice cracked. He was about your age when I lost him. Had the same fire in his eyes, the same stubbornness. What happened to him? Marcus didn't answer for a moment. Danny waited. He'd learned that some things couldn't be rushed. He got sick, not the kind of sick that gets better, the kind that just takes. Marcus wiped his eyes. I was overseas when it happened. Came home to a funeral. Never got to say goodbye. I'm sorry. After that, nothing made sense. I left the army, joined the club, spent 15 years trying to outrun the pain. Marcus looked at Danny with red-rimmed eyes. Then you found me, chained to that tree. Ding, and you did not run. You stayed. You gave me water and held my hand and told me help was coming. His voice broke. You gave me a reason to keep fighting Danny. First one I'd had in 15 years. Danny climbed out of his chair and did something unexpected. He climbed onto the bed, careful not to disturb the machines, and hugged Marcus. Then let's keep fighting together, Danny whispered. You and me. For all the kids who need someone to find them. Marcus held the boy tight. For the first time since Tyler's funeral, he let himself cry. Really cry. The kind of tears that cleaned out wounds instead of just acknowledging them. Together, he whispered back. I promise. Eleanor found them like that an hour later. Her grandson curled up next to the man he'd saved, both of them asleep, both of them finally at peace. She stood in the doorway for a long time watching. Then she pulled out her phone and made a call. Agent Moreno, it's Eleanor Hartwell. I've been thinking about that foundation you mentioned, the one for rescued children. I'd like to help. 3 months later, the Hartwell Donovan Foundation opened its doors. The building wasn't much a converted community center in downtown Nashville, donated by an anonymous benefactor who turned out to be Thunder Jackson. But it didn't need to be fancy. It just needed to be safe. Danny was there for the ribbon cutting. So was Marcus, finally out of the hospital, walking with a cane, but walking on his own. Eleanor stood between them, proud and fierce, and refusing to cry, even though tears streamed down her face. This is incredible, Moreno said, surveying the crowd that had gathered. 6 months ago, you were just a kid collecting chestnuts. Now you're running a foundation. I'm not running anything. Danny shifted uncomfortably in his new suit. I'm just helping. Marcus is the one who knows what he's doing. Don't sell yourself short. Moreno crouched to his level. The kids who come through here, they're going to see you. They're going to know that someone their age went through something terrible and came out the other side. That matters, more than any fancy building or official program. She's right. Marcus's hand found Danny's shoulder. You ready? Danny looked at the crowd, reporters, officials, families of the children who'd been rescued, and behind them a wall of leather and chrome. Every Hells Angels chapter in the state had sent representatives. I'm ready. He stepped up to the microphone. The crowd went silent. Danny looked out at all those faces, adults who expected wisdom, kids who expected hope, and somewhere in between his grandmother and Marcus, expecting nothing but the truth. My name is Danny Hartwell, he began. I'm 80 years old. 9 months ago, I found a man chained to a tree in the woods behind my house. He was hurt really bad. Most people would have run away, but I didn't run. I stayed, and because I stayed, a lot of other people decided to stay too. He paused, gathering his thoughts. I'm not a hero. I know everyone keeps saying that, but I'm not. I was just scared and confused, and I did what my daddy taught me to do, help people who need help even when it's hard. My daddy died doing that. He died trying to save kids he never met. And for a long time, I didn't understand why. Why would someone give up everything for strangers? Danny looked at Marcus. Now I understand, because strangers are just family you haven't met yet. Because every kid who's scared and alone deserves someone to find them. Because doing nothing when you could do something is the worst kind of giving up. He turned back to the crowd. This foundation is for the kids who don't have anyone, the ones who are waiting in the dark for someone to come. We're going to find them. We're going to tell them they matter. We're going to show them that the world isn't as scary as it seems when you have people who care about you. Danny took a breath. My daddy couldn't finish what he started, but I can, and I will, because that's what family does. The applause started slow and built to something thunderous. Danny stepped back from the microphone, his face red, his hands shaking. Marcus caught him in a one-armed hug. That was perfect, kid. I think I'm going to throw up. That's normal. Public speaking does that to people. Did it do it to you? Every time. Marcus grinned hard. The trick is throwing up before you get on stage, not after. Danny laughed, actually laughed, the first real laugh he'd had in months. Around them, the celebration continued. Food appeared, music played. People who'd been strangers 6 months ago talked like old friends. And watching from the edge of the crowd, 12 children stood together. The ones from the boat, the ones Danny had led out of darkness. One of them, Lily the youngest, the first one to take Danny's hand, broke away from the group and walked toward him. Danny, he turned. Hey Lily, how are you? Better. She was holding something behind her back. I made you something to say thank you. She held out a drawing, crayon on construction paper, a stick figure in a small leather vest surrounded by bigger stick figures on motorcycles. Above them, the words, my hero. Danny's throat tightened. Lily, this is amazing. My new mom helped me with the letters, Lily beamed. She says I can come back and visit whenever I want. She says you're the reason I have a family now. Danny knelt down so he was eye level with her. You're the reason you have a family. You were brave enough to take my hand when I asked. That was all you. But you asked. Yeah, Danny smiled. I guess I did. Lily hugged him, quick and fierce. Then she ran back to her group, already chattering to the other kids about something only children understand. Eleanor appeared at Danny's side. You okay, sweetheart? Yeah. Danny wiped his eyes. Yeah, I think I really am. 1 year to the day after Danny found Marcus in the woods, Hollow Creek held its first annual remembrance ceremony. They called it Danny's Day, despite Danny's protest that it should be called something else, anything else. It's embarrassing, he complained to Marcus over breakfast. It's an honor. It's weird, having a day named after you when you're 9 years old. Would you rather they called it Viper's Day? Danny considered. Actually, yeah, that would be cooler. Too bad. You're the one who did the impossible. You get the day. The ceremony was held at the site where Marcus had been found. The old mining equipment had been removed, replaced by a memorial garden. In the center stood a bronze statue of two figures, a small boy offering water to a man in chains. Danny hated the statue. It made him look heroic when he remembered mostly being terrified. But he understood why people needed it. They needed something to look at, something to remind them that ordinary people could do extraordinary things. Ladies and gentlemen, Mayor Roberts announced from the podium, it is my honor to welcome you to the first annual Danny's Day celebration. 1 year ago, a 7-year-old boy changed the course of history in our town. What started as a simple act of kindness became a movement that brought down one of the largest trafficking networks in American history, resulted in the rescue of over 300 children nationwide, and inspired the creation of the Hartwell Donovan Foundation, which has already helped thousands of families. The crowd applauded. Danny wished he could disappear. But the most remarkable part of this story, the mayor continued, isn't the numbers. It's what it taught us about ourselves. It taught us that courage doesn't require size or strength. It taught us that the people we fear are sometimes the people we should trust. And it taught us that one child's compassion can change the world. More applause. Danny's face was on fire. And now, to help us remember why we're here today, I'd like to invite a very special group to join us. The sound started in the distance. A rumble, a growl, building and building until it became a roar. Danny's head snapped up. Motorcycles, hundreds of them, thousands, pouring into the memorial site from every direction, their engines shaking the ground, their riders raising their fists in salute. What? Danny's voice trailed off. Marcus appeared beside him, grinning. Surprise! What is this? This is what happens when you save a Hells Angels life, kid. Marcus put his hand on Danny's shoulder. Every chapter in the country, over 2,000 riders. They came to honor you. The bikes surrounded the memorial site, forming a perfect circle. Their engines fell silent in unison, creating a sudden, powerful quiet. Thunder Jackson stepped forward, his voice booming without need of a microphone. 1 year ago, a little boy showed the world what real courage looks like. He didn't have guns. He didn't have training. He had a thermos of hot cocoa and a heart that refused to quit. Thunder's voice cracked with emotion. Today we honor that boy, not with words because words aren't enough, but with a promise. 2,000 riders raised their right fist. Danny Hartwell, little brother, guardian of the lost, we pledge ourselves to your protection. We pledge ourselves to your mission. And we pledge ourselves to the children who still wait in darkness for someone to find them. 2,000 voices spoke in unison. Blood and brotherhood. Forever. Danny stood frozen. Tears streamed down his face. He couldn't speak, couldn't move. Eleanor wrapped her arms around him from behind, her own tears soaking into his hair. "Your father is watching," she whispered. "He's so proud of you, sweetheart. So proud." Marcus stepped in front of Danny, blocking him from the crowd, giving him a moment of privacy. "Hey, look at me." Danny looked up. "This is real. All of this. You did this. You changed the world, Danny Hartwell. Not because you're special, because you chose to be kind when you could have been afraid." Marcus's voice was rough. "That's what makes you a hero, not the statue, not the day named after you, the choice you made when nobody was watching and nothing was guaranteed." "I was so scared," Danny whispered. "I know. I was too." Marcus pulled him into a hug. "But we did it anyway. And that's what courage is, being scared and doing it anyway." The ceremony continued. Speeches were made, songs were sung. Children from the foundation performed a play they'd written about a brave boy and a wounded warrior. Danny sat through all of it in a daze. When it was finally over, when the crowds had dispersed and the motorcycles had thundered away into the evening, Danny found himself alone at the memorial with Marcus and Eleanor. The statue looked different in the fading light. Less heroic, more human. "Marcus, yeah, what happens now?" Marcus smiled. "Now we keep going, one day at a time, one kid at a time. We can't save everyone, but we can save the ones in front of us. And maybe they'll save someone else. And maybe that person will save someone else. And the chain goes on forever. Like ripples in a pond." Exactly like that. Danny looked at the statue, at the bronze boy offering water to a bronze man. "I think I understand now," he said quietly. "Why Daddy did what he did. Why you do what you do. Why any of it matters. Tell me." "Because kindness is contagious. Like a virus, but good. One act of kindness makes another act of kindness easier, and another, and another. Until eventually the whole world is a little bit better than it was before." Marcus was quiet for a moment. "That's the smartest thing I've ever heard a 9-year-old say." "I'm almost 10. Still smart," Eleanor laughed. The sound was bright and clear and full of joy. "Come on, you two, it's getting cold, and I've got dinner waiting." They walked toward the parking lot together. Eleanor in the middle, Danny on one side, Marcus on the other. A family, not by blood, but by choice, which Danny had learned was the only kind that really mattered. Wow. The letter arrived on Danny's 10th birthday. It was from Lily. She was 11 now, living with her adoptive family in Oregon, thriving in school, making friends. "Dear Danny," she wrote, "today is my anniversary, 1 year since you found me on that boat. 1 year since you took my hand and told me everything was going to be okay. I didn't believe you then. I thought you were just saying what grown-ups say when they don't know what else to say. But you were right. Everything is okay. Better than okay. I have a mom and a little brother named Toby who likes bugs too much, but I love him anyway. I have friends and a room of my own and a dog named Biscuit. I have a life, and I have it because of you. My teacher says we're supposed to write letters to people who changed our lives. You changed mine. Thank you, Danny. Thank you for being brave enough to find me. Love, Lily. P.S. I still have the drawing I made you. I hope you still have it too." Danny did have it, framed on his wall, right next to his father's dog tags and the little brother patch Thunder had given him. He read the letter 3 times. Then he wrote one back. "Dear Lily, happy anniversary. I think about you a lot. I think about all 12 of you. I hope you know that what happened on that boat wasn't your fault. None of it was. The bad people did bad things, and that's on them, not on you. You survived. You're thriving. That's a victory. The biggest one there is. I'm glad you have a family now. I have one too, not the kind I was born with, but the kind I found. The kind that chose me. My grandma says that's the best kind. I think she's right. Keep being brave, Lily. Keep being kind. And remember, you're not just a survivor. You're a hero too. You just don't know it yet. Love, Danny. P.S. I definitely still have the drawing. It's the first thing I see when I wake up every morning." He sealed the envelope and gave it to his grandmother to mail. That night, he sat on the porch with Marcus, watching the stars come out. "You ever think about what would have happened?" Danny asked. "If I hadn't found you that day, all the time?" And I would have died in those woods, alone, angry, convinced that the world was nothing but darkness. Marcus leaned back in his chair. You showed me I was wrong, Danny. You showed me that light exists in the strangest places, in the smallest people. I'm not that small anymore. You're still pretty small. Danny laughed. Maybe, but I'm getting bigger. Yeah, Marcus's voice was soft. Yeah, you are. They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Marcus, yeah. Thank you for not dying, for staying, for becoming my family. Marcus reached over and squeezed Danny's shoulder. Thank you for finding me, for seeing past the leather and the patches and the scary reputation, for offering water to a monster and discovering a man. You were never a monster. I thought I was. For a long time, I thought that's all I could be. Marcus looked up at the stars. You taught me different. You taught me that it's never too late to be something better. Danny leaned against Marcus's shoulder. We taught each other. Yeah, I guess we did. Eleanor appeared in the doorway, 2 mugs of hot cocoa in her hands. Room for one more oite, always. She settled into the chair on Danny's other side, handing out the mugs. The 3 of them sat together watching the night sky, listening to the crickets, feeling the peace that comes after a storm. You know, Eleanor said after a while, when your father died, I thought my life was over. Then your mother left, and I thought it was worse than over. I thought I was just waiting to join him. Grandma, let me finish. Her voice was gentle. And then you came. This tiny, stubborn, impossibly brave little boy who refused to let the darkness win. You made me want to live again, Danny. You made me believe that good things were still possible. You did the same for me. We all did the same for each other. Eleanor looked at Marcus. Even this old outlaw, he's been the best thing that's happened to this family in years. Marcus looked genuinely surprised. I thought you hated me. I did at first, but you proved me wrong. You proved everyone wrong. Eleanor reached across Danny and patted Marcus's hand. You're a good man, Marcus Donovan. Don't let anyone tell you different. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Ma'am, I've done a lot of things in my life I'm not proud of. So have I. So has everyone. The question isn't what you've done, it's what you do next. Danny smiled. Grandma's right. She's always right. Damn straight, Eleanor sipped her cocoa. Now, are we going to sit here getting philosophical all night, or is someone going to suggest we order pizza? Danny and Marcus spoke at the same time. Pizza, Eleanor laughed. I thought so. She went inside to make the call. Danny and Marcus stayed on the porch, their hot cocoa growing cold in their hands, their hearts warm despite the chill. Marcus, yeah, I love you. The words hung in the air, simple, true, the kind of words Danny's father would have said. Marcus's hand found Danny's head, ruffling his hair the way he always did. I love you too, kid. More than you'll ever know. Somewhere in the distance, a motorcycle engine rumbled to life, then another and another. The Hells Angels out riding somewhere doing what they did. Danny closed his eyes and listened. It sounded like thunder. It sounded like family. It sounded like home. Years later, when people asked Danny Hartwell how he became the youngest advocate for trafficking survivors in American history, he always told the same story. He told them about a morning in the Tennessee mountains, about chestnuts and hot cocoa and a sound in the woods that he could have ignored but didn't. He told them about a man who looked like a monster but turned out to be a hero, about a grandmother who taught him that courage was a choice, about a father who died for children he'd never meet. He told them about 2,000 riders who came when the world turned dark, about 12 children who found their way home, about a foundation that changed hundreds of lives and counting. But mostly he told them about the moment that started it all. A 7-year-old boy standing in a foggy clearing, looking at a stranger chained to a tree. He could have run. He could have pretended he saw nothing. He could have let fear make his decisions for him. Instead, he walked forward. He offered water. He held a dying man's hand and promised help was coming. That was it. That was the whole secret. Not strength, not skill, not some special quality that made him different from anyone else. Just kindness, just courage, just the choice to help when helping was hard. Danny Hartwell became a legend not because he was extraordinary, but because he proved that ordinary people could do extraordinary things. All they had to do was choose. All they had to do was stay. All they had to do was reach out their hand and say 4 simple words, "I'm here to help." And that choice, that small, terrifying, beautiful choice, could change the world. It changed Danny's world. It changed Marcus's world. It changed the world of every child who was ever rescued because someone decided not to look away. And it all started with a little boy who stumbled upon a Hell's Angel chained to a tree and chose to stay. That is the power of kindness. That is the legacy of courage. That is the truth that Danny Hartwell carried with him for the rest of his life. One person can make a difference. One choice can change everything. One act of compassion can start a chain reaction that echoes through generations. The only question is whether you're brave enough to begin. Danny was, and because of him, countless others learned to be brave too.